Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the message boards, and I'm a senior world designer who works on Lord of the Rings Online. I've been doing it for a while now, too. Welcome to the third in our series of preview streams for the Kingdoms of Harad expansion pack. The first week of our previews, we did Adagim. Last week we did Kijon, and this week we are doing the region of Shêru. So for those of you who haven't seen the first two, we have those available both here on Twitch and on YouTube, so feel free to check those out. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this kind of stream, this is a world design focused stream where I'm just going to be talking about what goes into making the landscape and world of Lord of the Rings Online. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer any questions regarding things that are outside of that. So if you have questions regarding things like PvMP, class balance, skills, monster skills as well, lag, like those sorts of things, if you need help with accounts and whatnot, I'm not really the person that can answer those questions for you. Your best bet is to either check in on Friday for the weekly Court of the Ring stream, or to drop into the forums or Discord and ask your questions there, and hopefully whoever is on tap for those questions will be able to answer them for you here. But for now, we are here to talk about the world. I can also talk a little bit about housing stuff, so if you have questions about world design, landscape design, what the landscape of the new expansion pack is like and the kinds of creatures you're going to see in it, or if you have questions about housing, such as, hey, what's going on with Rivendell housing, feel free to ask them here, and I will do my best to answer them. So last week when we left off, we went through all of Kijon, which is out over there, to the north, or rather to the south and to the east of where I am currently. And then we took our stream up into this valley here, which was the borderlands in between Kudzagin and Imhular, the regions that were introduced as part of the Legacy of Morgoth expansion pack. And now we are working our way through Shêru. I would say one of the biggest challenges with Shêru for me was trying to blend the rocks and cliffs and whatnot from basically 4 different styles of cliff, right? So in Kudzagin and Imhular, you kind of have the gray cliffs, which you can see, here. You head a little bit further north into Kijon, and you have more like yellow sandstony cliffs. You start heading to the west and to the north, and you get more Kudzagin and Idigal influences with kind of more reddish rocks, and 2 different kinds of red, to be fair. So it was a challenge for me to figure out how to blend those different rock types together into something that felt good and felt natural. Let me turn off my cloak real quick so that we can get the day file overrides happening in here as well. So we are here now in Shêru. Shêru is kind of a blighted, blasted wasteland with salt flats and just gray and brown deadlands, effectively. But it's also got some things like these wonderful little crypts all over the place within it. These were a fun challenge because they look like dungeons, but they are built as landscape. So you've got the landscape entrance basically right into a mini dungeon space without having the teleport. These are always kind of fun to build, but they are a little tricky. Let me just rocket jump myself up here so you can see, because it's usually pretty hard to blend landscape together in this way. You can see here we've got this bug with some Z fighting, which it doesn't Z fight when you're in normal lighting, but it does when you've got your player key light. Normally you wouldn't be rocket jumping your way up to here to see that anyways, but it might be something that I'll need to look at to fix in a little bit. But the fun thing about this is, using assets that look like terrain to kind of fake it so that we can have these underground spaces. The new material template that we're using on some of these objects, it allows us to just kind of scale things up at an arbitrary size, but still keep the texture density what we want it to be is one of my favorite new things, one of my favorite new toys, because it gives us a lot of flexibility. So, Sam Burke asks, what are those yellow rock formations? So we'll see more of them as we get into Enturu, but a lot of Enturu has these kind of salty crystals throughout it, whether it is, salt rock, which you can see here with the more white rock, or the orange salt crystals. We wanted to, I think we have we tend to lean pretty heavily into things like blues and purples and even some yellows for our crystal objects. And so we kind of wanted to play a little bit with the colors that we used, and decided to push on, the orange instead for this time around. For those of you hoping, unfortunately, these assets are not housing decorations yet. I felt like we had plenty of housing decorations. I did not need to add more in for you all at this time. So here we have, this is the first hub that you'll run across in Enturu. The people here at the Hallows of Gadim, or Gadim have kind of moved in here and using it as a refugee safe haven. For what? Well, that is for the stories to tell, but apparently it feels safer being in here than it does, we'll go up here, than it does, being out in the wilds, because you do have, a small camp of wights and spirits that are chilling out in here as well. Luckily, there are guards to kind of help with that, and you can see there as I highlight, I don't know if there's a tooltip for it, it just says door. But there is a dungeon entrance back there as well. I think that's used prominently for missions, but there may be some non-mission content that's happening in there as well. I think one of the things that, outside of the challenge of all of this stuff, one of the things that I, building with all the different cliff textures in this region, one of the things I enjoyed most about this are the, vistas that you get. And not necessarily like lookout points, but as we get up here into the higher plains here, you'll be able to see kind of just a wide open sloping valley kind of experience. And when the sun hits it just right, it's almost blinding. All right, one of the things I'm going to need to do probably through here is clean up the roads. And I don't need to be uncloaked now, so we'll cloak off. All right. Let's see. Green Tea says, what do you mean by enough housing decorations? Please explain. Well, we had about 500 housing decorations for everything, so cloak these. There we go. So I'm not sure that we need to add any more. I actually did end up adding another 8 or so this morning because I had forgot a set of assets that I really wanted to make sure were represented. Alrighty, well, let's run up here. I know there's a couple of monster camps up this way that we can check out, featuring some of our new monster APRs, our new monster appearances. We've got a hyena camp, loaded up with adults and pups to harrow and heckle you as you explore through here and complete the content up in Spoilers Crag. Is there a reason the team decided to have more flowery descriptions along the region name pop-ups, including entering as opposed to last year, pop-ups upon entering as opposed to last year, e.g. Molderwood, Shorn Vale? So usually what we do, we have and here's a great view of Kijan from up here. Usually when we're building out region names, we like to have kind of a in-setting name and then something that's a little bit more English focused, something that is not a fantasy language that has been translated. And sometimes that can be helpful to have both of those things when you have, native characters in those regions talking about them, and then you have people who are from outside of the region talking about them, and they can refer to it kind of with the names that they have, or the words that they use. Similar to like how we have, Shagana and near Harad, right? Those are two names for the same place. It also helps a lot to help it retain in your brain if you have a easily recognizable name. Oh, here we go. Here's one of our new buddies. He is still in progress, so as you can see, he's not working quite right yet. It looks like he's got 14 knees instead of just one per leg, but these are our new mumakils. You can find them roaming around up here in Shêru. Their portion of them are basically a population that was brought in by the Ordekai, and then just kind of abandoned and left to their own devices, and have since, spread throughout. We've got a bandit camp coming up here, I believe. I think this is bandits. What do we got? Yes, bandits. At what was once an old Kinta grove. So you can sadly see that they have moved in and taken over where the elves once languished. So as you can see here, we kind of went from the gray rocks in the north, and now as we're coming up here, things are more of the tan and yellow colors of Shêru. That's to represent the continuation of the mountain lines from in that area. We'll make our way up this way as well. But this is one of my favorite views right now in the expansion pack, is just this mountain range that's kind of just gently sloping down through. It is a very satisfying look, at least for me personally. Hellhunt says, it looks different in a nice way, and that orange fits well and balances that gray. That was the kind of hope and plan. We've also got these terrain textures here that have a little bit more specularity to them than we normally do, so that you get, a little pop of movement almost as you're running around on the landscape. We'll continue our way up here. You can see our young mumaks hanging out up in the hills. One of the things that was interesting was figuring out, like, okay, so what is a mumakil camp? How do you build that kind of camp? And we kind of leaned on it as more of a, here's a small herd of animals kind of chilling out in the same spot sort of thing. It's always a little challenging to build camps of wild animals that don't necessarily have their own cultural assets to go along with them, because you want to be able to decorate a space, but how do you decorate a space when they don't have things to decorate with, right? You don't have mumak campfires and mumak tents and whatnot, so you have to either lean more natural or do sort of like what we did here, where there are ruins that are here and signs of former occupation that the mumak have just kind of co-opted for themselves. All right. Bullet Banjo says, "Is that an evil caterpillar on the slope?" I believe we have the worms, not the dragon kind worms, but the crawlers scattered throughout here. Crawlers, jackals, hyenas, terror birds make a reappearance in this region as well. Let's make our way through. I hear the airplanes ahead. I remember last week someone had commented that there were so many airplanes flying overhead my house this week, or last week. Manadler says that really flat yellow salt rock reminds me of the Giant's Causeway between Ireland and Scotland. Yeah, I leaned into columnar rocks a lot in this area, particularly in certain camps. So you'll see things like these, as well as salt rocks like that as well throughout this region. So we crisscross back and forth. Again, some of my favorite new assets here are these ravine rocks that just kind of feel like they've cut out, a trench in the terrain. And I kind of wish we had these when we were doing War of Three Peaks, because they would have been great for the wartime ditches and whatnot. Green Tea says, "Is that a new mount?" Assuming you mean the smaller mumakil. No mounts. Our new mount type for the expansion pack, if you have not pre-ordered or seen it at all yet, are the camels. That's our new mount type, and they're looking great too. All right, we're gonna run over here to get into another one of our indoor-outdoor dungeon spaces. This sort of space is always fun to build because the challenge of faking an interior is just, it's fun. While still leaving elements like this to kind of showcase that, oh, it is open to the sky. Let me rocket myself out now. Apologies to those of you that might get motion sick while I'm doing this. So the idea of Enturu in general was, it was once a kind of thriving mining hub for the peoples of Shagana and for the Temamir dwarves, who we'll see aspects of as we continue along on our journey. So the idea being that it was once a plentiful region full of resources that everyone wanted to mine and to utilize, and then the Ordokai came and started aggressively stripping it of its resources. And then the Ordokai had an oopsie daisy and discovered some things that they ought not have discovered. And thus Shêru has become the wasteland that it is now. So we're continuing our way across. We'll get down here to the Kanag momentarily. Let's run our way around here. So, and you can see here, as I mentioned, the mining efforts. You can see that up ahead. You can also see where the yellow and the red rocks are starting to blend together, where they're starting to come together, where it's the two rock types intermingling. Should probably replace some of these with far view versions of the rocks so that the textures don't look quite so tiny at a distance. Mario Justum says, going from the base sea level, how do these mountains compare in height to, say, the Misty Mountains? I would say at their peaks, they're probably comparable to the Misty Mountains, though I don't know specifically or exactly where in elevation this lies in comparison to the Misty Mountains. I haven't done a direct comparison. Usually when we're building stuff like this, the elevations are relative to what's around them, not necessarily relative to what else has been made. Because also to be quite frank too, the sea level can vary between regions as well based off of what our own needs for the space are. So, what might be the sea level in region 1, that might be higher or lower in region 5 just because of how we made that region. Let's see. Thangram says, it feels wasty, very clearly distinctive from Kudzagin. That is always our kind of plan and goal, is to try to have regions, have some element to them that feels distinct and unique. especially when we've got the like budget of an expansion pack behind it. It's a little bit harder to do that when you have, you're just doing a normal update. But with an expansion pack, it's really an opportunity to really like put our wish list out there and pull in the things that we want and like for it. So we'll make our way up into that cliff soon. For those of you curious, here we are at the map. So we started out here about where it says to Imular. This region does connect to Kudzagin as well, and probably what we'll do is I'll make my way up here. We'll kind of go down through, we'll head through the south, come up, we'll hit Jireet Mesh, which is one of our major hubs for the region. In fact, it is the major hub for the region. And then we'll work our way down into Kudzagin so you can see how it connects. Those of you that have played on Bulroar as part of our out-of-game preview might have already been able to discover and glean where these access points are. Bullet Banjo says, how hard is it to revisit older areas and add in new assets, like new ravine assets you mentioned? It is technically not hard, but there are potential knock-on effects to doing that. You want to go through and update things, so that's time, and then you have to ask, is it worth the time to go back to, say, Breland and add that kind of ravine along a river stream where it might naturally exist? Or is it better spent going to you do those kinds of things in new regions? We don't, unless there's a reason for us to go back to an older region, we don't often kind of do that kind of revisitation. Legendary servers are an opportunity for us to do that if we're launching a new legendary server and we're like, hey, we could really, stand to update this or update that. But generally, we're not looking for reasons to go back to those old areas to add in new techniques, because the return isn't always there. And we also run into the nostalgia arguments, right? Changing things for the sake of changing them on landscape is, sometimes met with a lot of interest and support, and sometimes met with distaste. Or confusion, I think I've told the story before how I made some changes in Rivendell because there was a bug, and come to find out a kinship, that was where that bug was happening. That was their primary meeting spot. So now they no longer had a rock to hang out on. Speaking of a rock, here's a young rock. These guys are present in this region as camp creatures and mixed spawn creatures. In fact, their nests are right up there, so we can check that out when we make our way through to get to Kudzagin. All right. Do we get any new enemy types like lions or crocodiles? So the expansion pack has a bunch of new stuff, a lot of new APRs and creature types. I don't know what kind of skill work has been done for those creatures, if any, but we have things like jackals, hyenas. There's a new appearance for worms in here. We've got, a bunch of new undead appearances. We've got the mumakils, the terror birds. There is a lot. Out of game has a bunch of new looks and feels for creatures, as well as a new wood troll type. So we're not slacking on monster artwork for this expansion pack. There is a lot, and some of it too is a product of us over the last several years thinking about what kind of creatures would we want for these regions, having a great big wish list. I love this. Where you just tilt your camera up and then all of a sudden you get blinded out. We've had all of these ideas for creatures ever since we started working on Corsairs of Umbar, and just over time, those creature types have slowly come in, and then we've used them when they've been available. So things like the Terror Bird is something that was produced at the tail end of the Legacy of Morgoth, expansion pack, and by the time the artwork was produced for it, we actually didn't have a use for it in that expansion pack. We had already planned and built a lot of stuff, but when it came time to do this expansion pack, we're like, hey, great, they can have a home here. So in addition to mumakil, we also have sulakil here in Shêru. All right, so we'll make our way down here to the Canag, and then up into this wonderful area up here, and then we'll head to the west and then north. I love the rolliness of this, and it is blasted and wasteland and kind of depressing, but it also is like interesting and distinct. Like I don't think we have a wasteland that feels quite like this. Nice Sulakil. All right, we're going into one of the few oases in this region, Kenur. It does have a bar inside it. We'll save that for the stream where we're actually going through and looking at the interiors of the expansion pack. But they've kind of built this settlement up around this small oasis here, doing the best they can to protect it from the elements and keep it viable and keep it something that people can arrive at and potentially thrive in. Green Tea asks, do you play other games to specifically see how they did landscape? Some games I do. There are some games where I'm not personally all that interested in the game itself, but the artwork and the design of the landscape behind the game is interesting for me. It is a hard thing to shut off game developer brain when you are trying to play a game for fun. It's a hard thing to do. I think I'm better at doing that now than I used to be. So if I'm, not playing something specifically with the intention of I just want to check it out and see, what it looks like and see how they approach their landscape, I kind of have to force that part of my brain to turn itself off. Alrighty, so we're making our way up to Kthra. This is a Ordekai stronghold with some of our friends, the Utugi, hanging out here as well. And where there's a Tugi, there's other stuff that is probably worse. We're going to make our way over here. So this location here is actually, here, we'll go to the Valley of Ikarban. So we have the river, not the river Barag, the river Usal, sorry. So in Kudzagin, there is this river that runs through here, and it is dried up. And where we are right now is the headwaters of the river Barag. And it appears as though the Ordekai unearthed something here, or did something that dried up the river. And we are seeing elements of it in here right now. We are in Damodar. Some hidden ruins. Ruins potentially hidden behind a waterfall that no longer exists. These guys look cool. I dig the hoods and the mask. And who doesn't want a skull for a belt buckle, really? That's just the height of fashion right there. So Damodar is an area that is, I think this area and this camp specifically is intended to be for small fellowship play. Come in here with 2 or 3 friends. So light support for group content in this region. Yeah, you can see there's some elites. Most everything in here is signature. You get out here though, and things are a little bit more normal. minus the jailer. As we work our way up this hill, the camp continues. So we've crossed the barrens of the River Barrog and are making our way up into the hill. So there's a fortress up in them thar hills that the Ordokai have commandeered as well. And we'll run ourselves up. And in this fortress exists one of our instance spaces for the expansion pack. You won't be able to get in through this entrance, but you can come up here through this little tunnel, as well as elsewhere, to find the landscape entrance for it. So we'll make our way up, get a view, and then I will answer some more questions. So we have over here a destroyed wall. Perfect. Best way to get into an instance. Is the wall broken? Great. I can make it into this instance, no problem. So here's the view of the western portions of Shêru. You can see the horizon here kind of disappears. That's because that ridge line marks where the terrain starts to slope back down into Idagal. Let's see, I'll run up over here, see if we can look to the east as well. And then we'll continue west a little bit because there's a couple of points of interest over that way to take a look at. There we go. So you can see the remnants of the river with those ravine assets that I do love. Lev Scotland says, "What animals live in such a lifeless landscape?" Well, we've seen some of those animals. That doesn't necessarily mean that they stay here, but they have lived, if not thrived. Thrutter says, "What zone does this expansion pack start in?" So our expansion pack has 4 regions that come with it. We've got Gadim, which is the first one, which is out in the. Here we will. Boop. So we have Gadim, which is the first one out here in the east. Then we have Kijan, which we previewed last week. We've got Shêru, which is where we're at right now. And then finally we have Idagal here, which we'll be reviewing or we'll be previewing next week. Currently our Bullroar has Gadim open for exploration. So if you are interested in checking out Gadim, please feel free to jump into that. As we have successive Bullroars, new regions will be added to the available list, but in order to help kind of keep us focused on specific spaces, Gadim is the first one and the only one currently available as part of our Bullroar. Goger says, "Will the Dwarves Hall in Umbar Baharbel ever be used in a future update?" I'm not sure what plans we have for that in the future. It did receive a visual update because we got a bunch of assets for the Temamir Dwarves, which we'll start seeing crop up over here as well. So we got a bunch of those assets specifically for the Temamir, as well as I've turned a bunch of those into housing decorations. So at the very least, you'll be able to go to the Shoreward Stone in Umbar Baharbel and see its new look when this expansion pack launches. As far as what it'll be used for in the future, I mean, I think story-wise that is Koltek's stronghold. So I would not be shocked if I believe it's Koltek's stronghold. But I would not be shocked if we do anything in the future with Koltek if it finds its way back to the Shoreward Stone. Thangdrum says, "Could have sworn I saw a rhino-looking fellow." Yes, you saw the Sulukil, which are kind of our not Triceratops. There are too many horns on this thing. But yes, vaguely a rhinoceros looking. Finori says, "Are you able to show us the preview of the main hub? Wondering how that will will look in this map setting. We'll get there. Jireet Mesh is the kind of the home city of the Temamir dwarves here in the south, and I don't know how much I should talk about with the story, but the general conceit, the general idea being that, they have for a very long time been sequestered in there and were kind of hiding, and there's a faction of them now that want to return to the world and kind of continue to both grow their kingdom as well as just be out in the world after being cooped up in Jireet Mesh for such a long time. Manadler says, "Have you had a drink of water or something yet?" Well, that's a good reminder. I'll be sure to do that because I've been talking a lot. Good old black tea. Definitely need to go through and do a scene cleanup pass because we had a bug with our scene file system that was causing things to not show up and work the way they should. And then, as I say that, my frills blink out on me. But we had a bug that was keeping things like, rocks and trees and whatnot from showing up in the way they were supposed to, and they were looking different in our tools than they were in our actual, client. And, so we had to track down and fix that issue. Here we have our new Kirram look for Shagana. Kind of an evil ogre looking beast. We make our way further down here, and we're going down into the valley so that we can really get the good walk up into the Quelling House, which is a formerly Temamir like entrance to mines. A small Temamir city with mine entrances within it. Formerly belonged to the Temamir, but has since been taken over by fell spirits and is now more of a charnel house, a crypt, than it is a fortress and dwarf holding. So as we approach, all right. Did Sauron import the Sulakil, or are they native to Mordor too? I don't have a good answer for that question. The Sulakil always, I was not present for the development of Mordor, and so the appearance of the Sulakil always kind of surprised me because they along with what we call the Croco Beaver. Their look is just very strikingly different from a lot of what we have as far as creatures go, so it's a little surprising when you run across them, but I'm not sure what the specific background for them is, what kind of creature they were supposed to be, where they were imported from. I'm sure there is some content associated with that, but I do not have the answer to that question. Thangdrum says, "I think Shêru is currently the most interesting looking zone so far." Well, thank you. I think the thing that makes Shêru stand out is just its concept is, I think, much more wild than we have in the other regions. The other regions, they have bad stuff going on in them, and they're populated by enemies and friends alike. But I think with Shêru, there is a degree of magic afflicting the region that makes it distinct. Let's see. See what we have for other. Druid's Fire says, "It's a crime against game development to have a waterfall without a secret treasure or chest behind it." When we were developing Elder Slade, after we had built everything. We had a designer come in and they wanted to have, I think they went through and counted all of the waterfalls that were in Elderslade and wanted a like hidden cave behind every single waterfall. And we were at the point in development where we couldn't absorb the amount of work that would be needed in order to make that happen. So it didn't, unfortunately, but Blade GPS says, will there be new races or classes for this expansion pack? No, there won't be. This expansion pack features a level boost. Usually, when we make our expansion packs, we tend to lean one direction or the other. We either do a new race or class, or we do a level boost. Usually, trying to do both in one expansion pack is a lot more work than we can really manage with the team size that we have, because a lot goes into making both of them. Alrighty, we'll step out here and cloak again. Let's see. What do we have for questions? Threader says, hats off, guys. You make the best landscapes in any game I have seen. Awesome job. The game looks amazing. Oh, thank you. We're trying our best. Sometimes the age of the engine fights us in what we want to do and how we want to do it. But we do our best. I think there are certainly a lot of things that we've learned from looking at modern games and what they do and how they do it, and then have tried to adapt some of those things to our own game, our own engine. And some of those things are more successful than others. Some work, some don't. And that's all part of the fun of developing a live game. Raviolin Loisto says, the Temamir love them big stairs, huh? I think dwarfs in general are big fans of stairs. They just love their stairs. And yes, those were dwarf whites back there as well. Druid's Fire says, man, I want that Death Aura when I'm running around landscape. Yep, I have my sneaky admin damage reflection. If even a monster even so much as sneezes at me, it falls over. So we'll pop down the hill right here. We won't go into Idagal proper, but there is one monster camp down here that features the new Kirram. So we'll pop down here to take a look at things. There's another of our dwarf whites. So that we can get a better look at them. And then we'll head our way back up. You can see the vistas of Idagal down over there. We've got our new Kirram. They're almost a little shiny. That's disconcerting. All right, we'll head our way back up. Sneaky says, will there be new crafting stuffs? So yeah, there is a full new tier for the crafting system. I don't have any other details beyond the fact that I went through and placed down a ton of resource nodes for crafting for the new tier. So those are across the landscape here. You see them as I run by. I don't think they have their final art yet, but they are present. And man, I really do need to just clean up these roads because they are just covered. And that's a note for myself. Riri Freak says that's quite a big not a dungeon, is there also a dungeon space associated with it? I think there is a story instance that takes place in a cave, or not in a cave, in a space that is associated with that. But that space in particular, the Quelling House, is not part of a like repeatable, a repeatable 3 or 6 person instance. Um, the castle up in the mountain that I ran up to, the Shagana one, that is um, that is a space that has a 6 person instance in it, I believe. Um, each region really only features one cap instance like that. So you have the raid, which is an Atagame. I think Kijan has a 3 person instance. I think Shêru has a 6 person, and Idagal has a 6 person. So we got our Grodbogs here. I don't think we got any new appearances for the Grodbogs, so that is a very bright pink one. But I don't know if that's been present for a while. But we've just got a little hive here for the Grodbogs. Mario Justin says the mountains in this region are some of the coolest looking, as there are multiple layers of them visible. Right, and I think that helps add the depth. When we have the fog and you can see kind of the different ridge lines. I think one of the things too that helps these mountains in particular stand out is the fact that a lot of them, we're not concerned about trying to make these mountains playable. At least not right now, anyways. And so since we don't have to worry about making them playable, we can just focus on making them cool. And sometimes what's playable and what's cool in terms of landscape don't always line up. So in this instance, we're able to have these mountains in the distance that look like they have depth to them, that look cool, that don't need to do anything other than look cool. Bullet Banjo says, what was one of the more ingenious ways you've overcome the engine limitations while building landscapes? I think the most recent one that I've been excited about has been utilizing a tool called World Machine, which really helps me accelerate the initial build of a landscape and do a lot of work to add natural shape forms to it, erosions and, realistic feeling peaks and valleys and whatnot. So that's I think one of the things that I'm most excited about from the world building perspective. From the art perspective, our artists have been leaning a lot more into spec maps and leveraging the spec maps, basically what makes the texture have a little bit of shine to it as you walk by it. So like you can kind of see here in this salty texture that it's got a little bit of like extra shine and sheen to it. So they've been leaning more into those sorts of things to add a little bit more, richness to the regions or to the textures. And I think the one that was like most successful is the puddle, the puddle texture we got for Umbar, where it has a reflective appearance, but is not itself reflective at all like water would be. So we have this pass, which is currently, the dwarves have put up warning signs, do not enter. Still not going to stop a rock from chilling out in there. But since it doesn't look like that's particularly safe, we're going to go and we're actually going to follow the road. But I really do need to clean off these roads because it is kind of hard to see the road itself with all of this debris on it. So we will make our way around. One of the things I want to do real quick, before we get too much into the mountains, I want to show you all the sunset. Oh, too late. 0.75. Nope. It would help if my numlock was on. Here is the sunset of Shêru. You know, do not stare at the sun. You might go blind. But I think part of too what helps it out is because of how broad the vista is in here, you don't have a lot that's blocking this effect from happening. And so you just get this almost overwhelming, you know, overbloom in the day file, which is like totally intentional. Yeah, don't stare at the sun. All right. Let's see. All right, I think I'm caught up on chat, so we'll make our way around here. I'm wondering if we've got our new worm appearance hooked up on them yet. So we're going to run down here real quick to check it out. There are a couple of spots along the dry Barog that have small little geothermal oases going in. We do not have the new APRs in yet, but these guys are going to be getting new appearances. Awesome new appearances. The artists that put those together, like, they look fantastic. So these will all be getting updated with a brand new look that feels a bit more akin to the original worm designs that we had, but kind of pushes it a little bit more on the dragon side of things. All right, so my note for myself: put fruit killers on the road. We will make sure we do that before the game launches. So now we come to the hidden city of Jireet Mesh. This was something that when we were first building it, you know, I think the story intention behind the space changed a little bit, as what happens with everything. So what we were originally planning to build, and then what the designer working in the space kind of wanted this to be. So before I ramble on a little bit more, you see down there, that's where the signs, the do not enter signs that the dwarves put up were. And part of the reason why that's there is because of the, you know, modifications to the story that we made. The idea behind Jireet Mesh is it is supposed to be this kind of hidden city up in the mountains. And so originally, I had built this space very prominently visible from most places in the region, because we wanted it to be this anchor for the region. And then the designer of it came to me and said that, you know, they would really appreciate it if, you know, we could really make it feel hidden and sequestered. So I raised up mountains, but still had kept the road where it was. And there's just another, you know, request and desire to make it even more hidden. So that's why there's the cave there with the warning signs. I think stories like that, it's like interesting how an original concept evolves once you start working in the space and working, you know, in the content. This definitely needs to be cleared out, because this is farmland. This should not be covered in rocks. You can see down here, if you were to jump down there, you would be able to get to the Grodbog Hive. You can see bits of Idagal from up here as well. So one of the things that I really wanted to do is create something, honestly, that reminded me a little bit more of Athrakar in the North Downs. You know, so many of our dwarf spaces are, you know, in caves. They're all interiors with only a slight facade. and I really wanted to build something that felt like it was a thriving open air city. It can still have its interiors. We've got all of these doors everywhere, so if we ever did want to build more of an interior space, we can, and we in fact do. This takes you into the city itself. Right now, I think my server is just a little hangry. I guess I'm not going to rocket jump either. Alright, so my server is a little cranky. That's okay. We're going to go and look at that interior when we get to the interiors stream, which is in 2 weeks, I want to say. I do anticipate myself to just suddenly launch up into the air whenever my server decides to catch up with me. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep on running. So we'll check out, we are almost done with this region. There's one last thing to check out, and that's the rock nest, which is right across the valley from here. That's another thing that changed kind of significantly as part of our development process, because originally we had Jireet Mesh here, and then we had the rock nests here. And the designer working in the space was like, oh, this feels a little too close. It feels a little too close. Can we move it? And you know, I had not put a lot of work into building this camp yet, so I was like, sure, easy peasy. We'll put it right over here, so it's a little bit further away, so that the dwarves, the Temamir dwarves, do not have to worry about, you know, rocks right next to them, picking them off and lifting them up into the sky. Riri Freak asks, are there different skyboxes for different night skies in game? So we have, you know, there's definitely at least two. We've got our normal sky, which you see in most everywhere in the north. So things like, you know, Eriador, Rovani, and Gondor all generally use one specific Skyfield asset. And then here in Umbar and Shagana, we use a different one to get you that, like, Milky Way galaxy feel. As far as constellations that are used in those spaces, I don't know if they are the same, or if they are same and unchanged, or if they are different, or if they are the same just in different positions. I would have to look into that answer. So now we have a rock roost. These monsters here kind of hit our, you know, they're our Drake analogs for this region. They're the creatures here that are our big flying monsters, at least in this portion of the landscape. Oh, server caught up with me. Alrighty, so we have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to head down into Kudzagin so we can see where everything connects, and we'll wrap up the stream at that point. Bullet Banjo said, I really love Othrakar and Gabalshather and Angmar. Glad to see the return of these hidden surface dwarf settlements. Yeah, I think, again, kind of pushing the, like, trying to make things look and feel different, and having a, you know, dwarf location that has a very, like, almost like open air city market going on for it was something that was interesting to me. And I'm glad that between myself and the designer who was working on this, that we were able to come up with kind of like compromises to, you know, what I wanted to build and the stories they wanted to tell. Druid's Fire scenario is clearly Avala, able to raise mountains with a mouse click. I prefer to think of myself as Slarty Bartfast. I made those fjords. I am very proud of them, and I've won awards for them. All right, and we'll go down here. So we're now running down through the remnants of the river. There are travel routes that will connect from Kutzagin up into Enturu, and this is where they come through. They just full on come right up the riverbed, and there's some ridges that they can take once they get high enough up. All right, and here we are. There was a errant land block here that I'll need to fix, but otherwise, here we are in, well, it'll figure it out. Enturu, Kutzagin, one of the two. But here we are approaching Kutzagin. Those of you that are familiar with Kutzagin might recognize this area as formerly being impassables. Over here to our right is one of the entrances into Shôneth, and there are travel routes that run into Shôneth from there as well. Those of you that may not have seen my comments about it, Shôneth and Bartulan now have travel destinations as part of the expansion pack. So they are a bit more accessible than they once were. But yeah, so why don't I run into a tree and then get a view of Kutzagin from here, and we'll pause our stream here. So thank you everyone for coming to this preview stream of Enturu for the Kingdoms of Harad expansion pack. One of the regions I built, I had a lot of fun building it and enjoyed trying to figure out a way to make a blasted wasteland look and feel interesting and distinct. Next week, we will be going through Idigal, which is a region that was once filled with a lake and was kind of like a vacation destination for the peoples of Umbar and Shagana. And it too has dried out considerably and has been waylaid by the hands of the Ordokai. So that is where we will continue our streams for next week. For those of you that are interested in jumping in and checking this stuff out for yourselves, we do have Boloror previews running. I don't know how much longer this current preview is going to be running for, but it should be at least for another couple of days. And we'll be having regular Boloror sessions, introducing new regions, every week going forward. I'm not sure if our current plan or schedule is to do one every week. With a new region, that may change based off of where we need more feedback, where we need more eyes on. But otherwise, feel free to jump in there. There's also for those of you that are housing inclined, there are a ton of new items that are going in with this, so feel free to check out Lalia's Market to see a sampling of them. But also the content and vendors throughout Murjala will have housing items as well. So thank you everyone for hanging out with me, asking your questions. Stay tuned to the message boards for any other announcements regarding Boloror streams or other events that are going on in game. And we'll see you all next week. I hope you have a great day.